And as you said, the how do we respond to this is key. A lot of fear comes in, a lot of it feels threatening, the ego kicks in.
Yes.
How you, I think I've heard you in some previous speeches talk about some tools that you have to maybe overcome those, like a mirror exercise.
There are a number of things you can do to listen to the voice of the soul as opposed to the voice of the ego.
Yes.
One of the things you can do is simply to remind yourself of who you really are. And one way to do this, there are many, but one way is to look into a mirror almost as a daily exercise. Look into your own eyes and speak to yourself from the level of the soul. So you might say to yourself, I am looking into the eyes of a transcendent being. I am looking into the eyes of an eternal, courageous soul. I am looking into the eyes of holiness, because it's my belief that that is who each and every one of us quite literally is. Now, there are some other things you can do as well. People often ask, well, how can I find out what my soul planned for this lifetime or what my soul would like me to do? On my website at yoursoulsplan.com, there's a page called Accessing Your Pre-Birth Plan, and on that page is a meditation people can use to get information about what they planned before they were born. That's very helpful. Another thing you can do, if you have to make a decision in life and you're wondering what would my soul like me to do or what is the higher path, you can flip a coin, not for the purpose of actually making the decision, but what you want to do is see how you feel in the instant you realize whether it's heads or tails. So for example, let's say that someone is thinking of quitting their job, and they say, if it comes up heads, I'm going to quit. If it comes up tails, I will stay. Then they flip the coin and it comes up heads. In the instant you realize that means you're going to leave your job, you want to see how you feel, because feelings are the language of the soul. Your soul will communicate with you through feeling. In that instant, it comes up heads prior to the moment when your logical mind starts to think about the ramifications of quitting your job. So if it comes up heads and the instantaneous feeling is one of joy, that's a communication from your soul saying maybe you should leave your job. If it comes up heads and the instantaneous feeling is one of fear, that may be your soul saying to you, well, maybe you should look at this and perhaps stay in the job.
Yeah, because the thing is that it's great to have, you know, not all psychics, I guess, are equal, and not all of us will go to psychic. So it would be great to have techniques to discover that, as you just shared with us, on how we can do that without them, you know, because not everybody can afford or, you know, want to deal with psychic, but I think we all have in each of us that ability.
Well, another technique people can use without having to go to a psychic, before you go to sleep at night, speak out loud to your soul and pose a question that you would like an answer to. Also ask to be given a dream that will answer the question, and then also ask to be awakened so that you can actually remember the dream. Then keep either pen and paper or perhaps even a tape recorder next to the bed so that when you are awakened, and you will be, that you can write down or record what the dream tells you. This is a technique I've used myself on a number of occasions, and it's amazing the sort of information you can get when you try this technique.
It's quite impressive how our soul chooses our body as well. Like, why this particular body? You had a particular background previously. Have you ever analyzed that? Like, why did that came in the picture?
My understanding is that we are actually given a choice of several different bodies we can have. And this depends, of course, on who we select as our parents. But basically, the choice of the body and all the incarnational circumstances, the time period, the geographic location, the choice of parents and siblings, all of these things are chosen prior to birth so that we can maximize our learning while we're here. One of the stories in Your Soul's Plan that I find interesting is the gentleman who planned AIDS before he was born. His name is John Elmore. John, it turns out, had a number of previous incarnations in which people said shaming words to him, and he internalized the shame, he internalized the judgments, and allowed others to define him to himself. This accounts partly for his choice of AIDS in this lifetime, because when he had his life review after those lives, he saw that he had believed what others said about him, and he said to himself basically, I would like to have the same challenge, that is, people saying shaming words to me, but this time I want to get it right and rise above it. I want to define myself to myself. So he chooses AIDS because he knows it's the most shame-based illness in the world today, and this will give him the challenge he wants. But to tie this in with your question about bodies and incarnational circumstances, John chooses to be born in the Deep South in the United States in the mid-1950s in a very small town where, as he's growing up, as he watches television, he sees German shepherds and fire hoses used against African Americans who are trying to vote. And what he is witnessing there is an entire race of people being publicly shamed. This is a deliberate choice on the part of his soul to orient him to his primary task in life, which is the healing of internalized shame. Now, John has no conscious understanding of this, but it doesn't matter. By seeing those images on TV as he grows up, it orients him to his primary task in his life. So for people watching today who wonder, well, why am I here? What did my soul plan for me to learn? If you examine the circumstances of your incarnation very, very closely, you'll find a lot of clues there that will orient you to your major purpose here.
And those clues can be the type of parents we have, or if we don't have parents, if we lost them at a young age. I mean, how...
It's everything you incarnate with, the specific time of your incarnation, the year, the geographical location, the type of body you have, whether you're male or female, the race that you incarnate into, the current events that are happening in your country around you as you incarnate, all of those things.
And some people talk about soulmates, and we have some soulmates, like love soulmates, but do we also have soulmates, or how would you call them, people that we knew were going to be there to help us during our work?
My understanding of a soulmate is another soul, most likely in our soul group, with whom we've had many, many incarnations and played many different roles. So these would include being mother and daughter, father and son, husband and wife, best of friends, mortal enemies, murderer, and the one who is murdered. It's usually somebody we have quite a bit of karmic balancing to do with. So the soulmate can incarnate as a romantic partner, but frequently there are soulmates who are not romantic partners. And the way you can recognize a soulmate, number one, there is just a sense of knowing the person even when you first come into contact with them. And number two, you very often push each other's buttons. So if you are in a romantic relationship with a soulmate, you will find that your issues and the other person's issues are very much prominent in that relationship, not for the purpose of punishing you in any way. It's for the purpose of stimulating your spiritual growth. Now, there's also something called a twin flame.
Yeah.
My understanding of a twin flame is a soulmate with whom there is no karma. So if you find your twin flame, that tends to be a romantic relationship that is quite blissful and joyful because the karma has already been balanced previously.
Very interesting. And would you say that we're some particular soul that just came on the planet to face what's happening right now, or is there in each, or do you have a view about this? I know the question is quite deep, but is there been some different waves of souls arriving at a certain time in life history? Like right now we're going through a major crisis that is just the beginning of it. You know, some of us are in the forefront, like you are, to help others understanding that there is a bigger plan. Are we all the particular souls that are meeting right now and chose to go through this, I guess?
Well, let me say a couple things about this. First, it's my understanding, and this is the information that has come directly from Spirit, that there were 3 times as many souls who wanted to be in body right now as available bodies. So if you are watching this interview today, you had to make a 1 in 3 cut to be here. And as I understand it, in order to make that cut, you had to have something to offer the shift in consciousness that is now occurring. So a lot of people will contact me and they will say, Rob, I don't feel very good about myself or my life. It seems that I'm not contributing in any way. Well, simply by being here, you have to have something to contribute. You couldn't make the 1 in 3 cut otherwise. So I share this with people as a way of encouraging you to feel good about yourself and who you really are at the soul level. Now, more specifically, there are people who incarnate as light workers. The plan of a light worker is to help raise consciousness. Frequently, although not always, a light worker will plan prior to birth to undergo great trauma or challenge so that they can rise above it and pave an energetic pathway for others who face the same challenge to also rise above it. So very often, light workers have had extremely difficult lives, particularly as children growing up. There are also waves of what you might call crystal or indigo or star or dolphin children. They have various names now. But there are children coming in who are very, very gifted psychically and energetically, who can see behind the veil, who have memories of past lives or memories of their pre-birth planning. I was speaking with a child like that just a few days ago who was about 8 years old, and I asked him, I said, Gabriel, do you remember why you chose the parents you chose? And he said, I do. I was there with my sister, and we were shown all the people we could have as parents, and there was all this light around two of them. So I turned to my sister and I said, let's choose those two. And she said, okay, and that's how we picked them.
Oh, I get goosebumps.
There are children like this who are coming in now, and they have these memories.
Amazing. At
It
8
is amazing.
years old.
At 8 years old.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then the third one, you said there was a third one? No?
Well, different terms apply to these kinds of children. Indigo, crystal, star, dolphin. There are some differences between these different categories. I don't know what they are. That's not the focus of my research. But I've encountered enough of these children to know that they're coming in with what you might call different wiring than the previous generations, wiring that makes them quite gifted in many ways. So and I think they will be the leaders of the shift in consciousness.
Mm. So there's the light workers and the indigo children, and then there is what are other beings offering help, or can we get in contact easier maybe with angels?
I think we can. I think the veil is thinner now than it ever has been, and this is part of the plan for the shift in consciousness. So you will see many people now working often informally as mediums, channels. They're just sort of popping up all over the world. And what's interesting to me is that the people who are doing the mediumship and the channeling seem to be coming from all walks of life. It's not just people who were raised in families that had this kind of orientation. It's not just people who had mediums and channels as parents. You have doctors, lawyers, people from all different walks of life, very often mainstream aspects of society, who are coming to this, and sometimes they leave their careers and they do this full time, which is what I did. Sometimes they just do it on the side, and they may not even tell very many people that this is what they're doing. But they're coming from all areas of life, and I think this is part of the plan, because Spirit is trying to bring forth what previously were very arcane, esoteric ideas and make them available to the masses on a large scale. So we need people in all quadrants of society to do this so that everyone is reached.
Do you think we can all connect to another person's soul, and that's what we should do when we meet someone?
I think that we can, and one way to do this is actually to speak to another person's soul. So sometimes people will write to me and they'll say, I've had a long-standing conflict of many years with someone in my family. I just can't seem to speak with this person in any meaningful way. Well, on the level of the personality, that may be true, but you can always speak to the person's soul. So perhaps before you go to sleep one night, you might speak aloud to the soul of the loved one, communicate the nature of the problem, which would already be known to the soul, but it will help connect you energetically to the person's soul if you speak about the problem, and then make a request that you would like there to be healing in the relationship, or something specific you would like the soul to engineer. The soul then has the ability to work with the incarnate personality through feelings, through intuitive prompts that can make a big difference in your relationship. And let me give you an example. I received a letter recently from a woman who had a long-standing conflict with her son. They had not communicated directly for quite some time. She was quite upset about this, and so I suggested to her, speak aloud to the soul of your son and ask for there to be a healing. She did that, and the very next day the son simply showed up at her home for dinner. And this was without having had any prior contact with her for a very long time. So that prompt to the son to show up at his mother's home for dinner, I believe that came directly from his soul as a result of her request to his soul.
Wonderful, very insightful. I have just a last little question. So when we, if we relax, how can we really be in touch with our soul? Like, let it speak, because again, I know we're going back to some previous things, but I think most of the viewers now realize how important it is. And that it is truly the essence, working on our soul's plan. Of course, reading your book, Your Soul's Plan. Is there anything else? Is there particular conditions where you found that you can particularly be in touch with that, being relaxed in nature? I know.
Yes, being relaxed and in nature is very helpful. If you're going to go out into nature to communicate with your soul or spirit in general, it's important to go alone. You really need to be alone in that process. Sit very quietly, still yourself in meditation, and try not to grasp at answers. When you grasp, the energy of grasping is an energy of desire, and desire is a very low vibration energy. So when you're in a state of desire, really wanting answers or solutions from spirit to certain problems, that lowers your vibration and puts more distance, so to speak, energetically between you and your soul or the beings in spirit you're trying to communicate with. So when you meditate or go out into nature and try to communicate with your soul or other non-physical beings, it's important to just sort of put the request out there as though you have a hydrogen or helium-filled balloon and you're just letting the balloon go. Just release it and then wait for the answer to come to you. In addition to walking in nature, another thing you can do is try to tune into your soul in the moment you're falling asleep or the moment you're waking up in the morning. That's a transitional area where you can be in greater intuitive contact with your soul and pose a question and just see what sort of intuitive impulses come to you, again, before the logical mind really kicks in and starts flooding you with thoughts that can in some cases act as a barrier between you and your intuition.
It's such a delight speaking with you. Last thing, I keep on, but last thing, did you get any guidance as far as what's happening right now or where the future is heading, or what was your? I know you speak with a lot of psychic or spirit. How do you? What's in our future?
Well, I'll share an interesting story with you. When I first started the research for Your Soul's Plan, I was working with a channel who channeled a number of the Ascended Masters, and in every session I would always say, when is the shift in consciousness going to occur? So in the first session they responded 2012, which is the date we all hear about. The next time they said 2010. The next time they said 2016. At that point I said, why does the date keep changing? And they said, because the collective consciousness keeps changing, it will happen when you are ready for it to happen. So that's the first piece that I would share with you. Now in terms of what specifically is going to happen, every time you ask a person that question, you will get a different answer. My own belief is that it may very well be a return to oneness consciousness. Oneness being the idea that there's really only one being in the universe. It's you, it's me, it's everyone listening to this interview. Each of us is an individualized expression of the one. Now a lot of people understand oneness intellectually. Very few of us have that as our day-to-day experience. I believe that the shift in consciousness may take us from the intellectual understanding of oneness to that as a day-to-day experience, that will be what we live every moment of every day.
Well, on this oneness, I thank you very much for sharing all this information with us.
Thank you for having me here.
And having the capacity or the letting go to welcome that information and then again sharing it with us. Thank you very much. And for you guys that want to read more, of course you can go to yourplanssoul.com and also read yoursoulsplans.com and read Rob's book. Thank you.